Everybody ready? Good. Thank you all for being here today. This is a holy microphone with an unholy speaker. That's the issue we're having here. Thank you all for being here today. We are here. All right, let me try again. I just want to make sure the sound is not a mess. Am I messing you up? Your sound is, if I am.
Better without.
Better without? Okay. Well. Turn it down? Oh, okay. All right. How's that? Is that good? All right, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you back there. Appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. We are here to announce a very important bust of 4 people in relation to 3 different shooting incidents, 2 of which happened on a single day. ADA Jeffrey Palmer, who's the Assistant Chief of the DAO's Gun Violence Task Force, will be talking about the details of this very, very important arrest in a moment. But first, I'd like to acknowledge some of the people who are here. We have with us today First Assistant Carolyn Engel-Temin. We have ADA Jeffrey Palmer, who is the Assistant Chief of the DAO's Gun Violence Task Force and has poured a couple of years of very good collaborative work with the Philadelphia Police Department into this case. We have with us Melanie Nelson, who is the Chief of the CARES Unit at the DA's office, which works within the Victim Services Support Division. And we are also joined by the Reverend Dr. Damon Jones, Senior Pastor here at the Bible Way Baptist Church. Special thanks to Dr. Jones for hosting us. For those of you who are unaware, Pastor Jones has a very, very interesting and very long history in criminal justice in Philadelphia. As he explained to me, he's 59 years old today, but he has 57. Oh, man. But he has spent 37 years. Did I get that right?
That's right.
He has spent 37 years of those 57 going to the Philadelphia prisons, interacting with juveniles and with young adults very, very steadily. In 2014, he became a member of the advisory board to the Philadelphia prisons because he has been such a steady presence there and done so much important work, not only within the prisons, but also within this community in relation to prevention and also in relation to gun violence more generally. So I do want to start out just for a moment by talking about the reality that there's a wide spectrum of ways that this DA's office is trying to work with our partners in government and in community to push for public safety. The way we're going to talk about most today is enforcement, vigorous, traditional enforcement, investigation, and prosecution. But there are many cases where the best path is a different path. There is justice through mediation. It's the kind of work that's done by the DA's office within the private criminal complaint unit, where disputes that could get way too big and get violent are mediated in order to make sure people who know each other and neighbors do not take it to that level. There's justice through restorative models. This is often done in our office with juveniles who are charged with offenses that are somewhat serious but not too serious, and what we have found is we have a better rate of rehabilitation with those juveniles, and we have more satisfied victims in those cases because of their participation and commitment to pushing that juvenile in a positive direction. But what we are going to talk about more today is our commitment to vigorously and appropriately prosecute those who carry guns illegally, point those guns, and shoot those guns at others. Today's press conference should be another very clear message to the general public, and I'm going to talk to the groups in a minute, slightly different language. but it should be another clear message to the general public that people who commit acts of gun violence in our communities will see an appropriately long sentence in custody. Our communities, our people deserve to be safe. Our children, families, and seniors deserve to walk the streets of Philadelphia without the fear of becoming a victim, without the trauma of witnessing violence in their neighborhoods. Now, my message to some of these groups is a little bit different. We did a press conference not all that long ago about a group called O to the 4. And at that time, we said O to the 4 was going to go to the jail. And they did. Not the same day, but soon enough. Years of hard work, years of the use of forensic technology, good investigation, excellent detective work, meant we weren't just promising O to the 4 go to the jail. O to the 4 went to the jail. That's what happened. Well, when you take down one group, sometimes they scatter and join up with other groups. And we're here to talk about some of that as well. There is a group known as 524. Well, some of what we're going to talk about today will close the jailhouse door on 524. We're going to talk about CCK. CCK is going away. They better get ready. We're going to talk about a group known as 56th Street, and also sometimes called Christie Rec, because they can be found near Christie Rec at times. Well, we got a new kind of rec. We got a new kind of recreation for members of the group Christie Rec. You might call it SCI Rec, State Correctional Institution Rec. Christie Rec is going to get yard time. They're going to be walking that circle or walking that square. Their rec time is going to be when the jail says you can go out now, and then the jail says you can come back in. That's what's coming. I hope you hear me, 524. I hope you hear me, CCK. I hope you hear me, 56th Street and Christie Rec. Because we are watching what you are doing now. We are watching what you did in the past. And a ton of the credit for this work has to go to the incredible work of our Gun Violence Task Force, led by Bill Fritzy, whose assistant chief is Jeffrey Palmer. And a ton of the success of this work has to go to our law enforcement partners. In this particular case, it goes to the Philadelphia Police Department, who worked so vigorously on this case. And I hope Mr. Palmer will speak a little bit more about that. In this case, a lot of the credit goes to Detectives David Ganone and James Brady from the Shooting Investigation Group of the Philadelphia Police Department. All right. At this time, it is my pleasure to call forward ADA Jeffrey Palmer, who, as some of you may recall from prior press conferences, has a very interesting history when it comes to prosecution and it comes to justice. He was in the military, and in the military worked as a lawyer, which has the unique American aspect of having him work both as prosecutor and defense attorney, depending upon the case. He brought all of that experience to the DA's office when he came here, and remains just as dedicated to duty and honor and getting it done the right way, or as they say, coming correct. So I'm going to ask Mr. Palmer to come up here and explain what is going on with the process of arresting 4 people, types of charges, and the details of these shootings, which include homicide. Mr. Palmer?
Thank you, DA Krasner, and thank you, everyone, for being here today. I'm here to announce a second presentment that has been returned by the county investigating grand jury that's been tasked for over a year now with investigating several groups that commit acts of violence within West and Southwest Philadelphia. Several months ago, we were here to announce the result of some charges against a group known as O to the 4. Today, we are here to announce charges against, mostly against the opposite side of that conflict, which is a group known as 524. Also charged, however, were members of a group, as the DA talked about, that goes by 56th Street or Christie Rec, or they go by Clappers as well. And this group has joined up with O to the 4, really what's left of O to the 4 at this point, which isn't much, to form a new group called CCK, which stands for Campers, Clappers, and Clappers. The first Clappers and the second C in that group being 56th Street, Campers being another name for O to the 4, and Clappers with a K being a group that associates with 7th Street in South Philadelphia. This has essentially become a coalition of groups that don't have many members left on the street, so have tried to sort of scrape together what they can at this point to form a new group. So in 2021, detectives and members of the Criminal Intelligence Unit, what was then called the Southwest Task Force, came together to identify many shootings in Southwest and West Philadelphia that we believed were connected to acts of ongoing group violence, which trace back to a specific incident, a specific homicide of an O to the 4 and 46th Street member. Those cases were investigated using a variety of forensic assets, including the ATF's NIBIN database, which is the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network. This is the computer system that is able to take fired cartridge casings. Fired cartridge casings are the shell casing, or what's left behind after you fire a firearm, and is expelled from the firearm and then frequently left at the scene. But the NIBIN system is able to link up these fired cartridge casings and figure out when the same gun has been used in multiple incidents, possibly leading you closer to a suspect or a specific group that may be passing these guns around to use in multiple incidents. We also used forensic extractions of cellular phones, and what that means is, by the use of several different machines, the Philadelphia Police Department, but actually the District Attorney's Office, specifically the Gun Violence Task Force, we have analysts that are employees of the District Attorney's Office that perform these forensic extractions. The phones are hooked up from suspects, are hooked up to machines after a search warrant is obtained from a judge. The data off of those phones is then extracted or taken off of the phone in a way that can be examined and analyzed by detectives and ADAs like myself. So what can we see when we do that? Well, we can see text messages. Sometimes we can see GPS locations where the phone may have been at certain times. We can see people's interactions with different applications on the phone, what they've been doing on those applications. That can often provide a lot of evidence to an investigation such as the ones we're announcing today. Also, we used call detail records, which are information that are obtained from cell phone companies. If you know somebody's phone number, you can serve a search warrant on a cell phone provider and get what we call the cell phone tower connection information. So where was somebody's phone connecting, and where was that tower located? In an environment like Philadelphia, what tower a phone was connected to is often very useful in determining where that phone was, because in a densely populated cities, the towers are very close together. So more often than not, somebody is located very closely to the tower that their phone was connected to. Now, it's also important to note that not just anybody can look at these call detail records. This isn't something that you or I could look at and necessarily know what they mean. We have trained analysts also that are employees of the District Attorney's Office at the Gun Violence Task Force that take these call detail records, and they are able to plot them on a map by knowing what that data means. They've received extensive training in this. They are then able to testify as experts in court about where those phones were located and how they interpreted those results, as it is a highly technical field. But by the use of that and other forensic assets, as well as witness interviews and things like that, detectives were able to start identifying some of the suspects and ultimately bring charges against the individuals that were committing these shootings. Charges like in the last press conference we did for O to the 4. And now what we're here to announce is first, arrest in an investigation of a homicide that happened on April 7th of 2021 at 628 South 55th Street. This is an incident where police responded in the evening on April 7th to find a Jeep Cherokee that had crashed into several parked vehicles along 55th Street, along South 55th Street. When police responded, they found an unresponsive young man who had been shot in the head and was non-responsive. However, before they could extract him from the vehicle had actually caught fire, and members of the Philadelphia Fire Department had to come put out the fire, at which time they were able to get the victim out of the car, and he was pronounced deceased at Penn Presbyterian Hospital. Inside the vehicle, detectives found several shell casings, all coming from one firearm. They were submitted to the NIBIN system. The NIBIN system produced results that this same firearm, which was not recovered, but the shell casings were linked to shell casings left behind at various crime scenes associated with a group that goes by the name 60K. Now, that was important to the detectives because the prime antagonist or rival of 60K is known to be 56th Street. So when you find shell casings in common in a 60K area, detectives begin to think, well, who would have come to a 60K area to shoot members of that group? And immediately started thinking 56th Street. So now eventually detectives were able to figure out through the use of the secret investigating grand jury procedures who the suspect and who the ultimate individual that has now been charged in this case was. And that's Roderick Williams, who is a member of 56th Street, or the Clappers with a C, the Christie Rec Group. An arrest warrant has now been obtained, and charges are ready for Mr. Roderick Williams, including homicide, various violations of the Uniform Firearms Act for carrying a firearm that he was not licensed to carry, and all related charges as well. Mr. Williams is currently in custody already. He is in custody pre-trial for another homicide that is connected to this same feud, as well as 2 additional non-fatal shootings. On June 29th of 2021, police responded to the 5900 block or 5922 Lansdowne Avenue and found 2 shooting victims who had been shot multiple times. Both were able to be treated for their injuries at local hospitals and survived, thankfully. Found at the scene, though, were quite a bit of fired cartridge casings. In this scene, they found 24 9mm fired cartridge casings, as well as 12 what are known as 7.62 fired cartridge casings. Now, the 7.62 fired cartridge casings are interesting because those are casings that come from a long gun or an assault rifle. Notably, not the firearm used in this case, but as a firearm that people know, that's what an AK-47 or a fully automatic weapon used by the Russian military fires, a 7.62. It's a very large round and not necessarily a common round that we usually are seeing in shootings in Philadelphia. Video was also obtained of the incident showing 3 shooters exiting a red Honda Civic, shooting at the 2 victims. However, identities were not able to be obtained from the video alone. Later that same day, several hours later, police responded to 4632 Walnut Street, where 2 victims were found, one deceased, a female victim in her 30s, as well as another victim who was a female in her 30s that was thankfully able to be treated for her injuries and did survive. There were also quite a bit of fired cartridge casings found at this scene, including more 7.62 fired cartridge casings, 8 of them at this scene, and 13 9mm FCCs. Matches were found between the fired cartridge casings at the Walnut Street scene and the Lansdowne Street scene earlier that day. And ultimately, using this information, as well as the other types of forensic assets that I've been talking about, detectives were able to discover that 3 individuals were responsible for both shootings, as they had traveled to both scenes that day and fired their weapons. And those individuals are 524 members, Jasir Nelson, Kenneth Wilson, and Trevon Johnson. Now, Jasir Nelson and Kenneth Wilson are currently in state custody already, where they are serving a state sentence after a successful conviction by the DA's Office Gun Violence Task Force, ADA Joe Lanuti, for a commercial robbery that they have committed. And Trevon Johnson was taken into custody by the Philadelphia Police Department last week, and all 3 have been charged with homicide for the incident on Walnut Street, as well as attempted murder for the incident on Lansdowne Avenue, and also all related charges pertaining to firearms and other such charges. So it's important also to contextualize where all these groups fall in the different feuds. So 524 is a primary antagonist of O to the 4, or what's now known as CCK. These two groups have been in a back and forth cycle of violence since 2021. Now, as a result of this, obviously we found that other groups like 56th Street have been brought into this same conflict between O to the 4 and 524. And this investigation shows that we are not merely investigating one side of this conflict. We are not merely interested in just one group, O to the 4. We are investigating all sides of this conflict. We are investigating all groups, whether it's 46th Street and Walnut, 46th and Woodland or FSB, 56th Street, Christie Rec, Clappers, O to the 4, or the Campers, Myers Rec or Nine Side. It doesn't matter what group you're in West or Southwest Philadelphia. We are investigating you. We are watching you. We know who you are, and we will arrest you. We will charge you, and you will serve time in prison if you continue to act in this way. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to the district attorney for any more comments he may have.
Thank you, ADA Palmer. It is now my pleasure to invite one of the most respected faith leaders in criminal justice in the city of Philadelphia, Pastor Damon Jones.
Thank you, D.A. Krasner, for coming to Bible Way today. We are grateful for you and the work that you do. I would simply say, and I'll be very brief, that every time I go to the Criminal Justice Center, there's a particular courtroom that I do not like to go to. The courtroom is room 306. And the reason I don't like 306 is because it has a center aisle. And in that center aisle, there are dividers that divide people on one side or the other. When you walk in, you go to the left, you're there to support the defendant. If you sit to the right, you're there to support people who have been victimized by crime. And one day I'm sitting there and I decided that my real place is in the center. It's in that center aisle. One side, the other side, I want to be in the center. Because regardless of what side you choose to sit on, both sides have to deal with pain, heartache, anguish, grief, suffering, both sides. Both sides need some patience and kindness. Both sides need understanding and sympathy. Both sides need justice and support. We need people who are willing to stand in the center. We're all affected by what happens on both sides. Understand a need for a balanced approach is what I think helps the situation here and now, today, in real time. Justice evenly and lawfully distributed is critical. Restorative justice, rehabilitation, all critical. But we all need to stand together in the middle because it all affects all of us. Dr. King said we're all tied together in the single garment of destiny, caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality. What affects one directly affects all of us indirectly because we're all in this together. And so I conclude just by saying that all of those groups that D.A. Krasner has called out today and in the past, he has a job to do. He has a job that he was elected to do, and we expect him to do the job that the citizens of the city called him to do. And I have a job to do as a clergyman, as a community leader. If there is a way we can stop you from shooting and killing each other and going to jail, come see me. Damon Jones, Bible Way Baptist Church, 52nd and Master Street. Let's all work together and let's all kind of move into the center aisle and put an end to this madness. Thank you, Mr. DA, for coming, and to all of the staff and for all of you for being here.
Thank you, Pastor. There's the Bible way, and then there's another way. So I'll say it one more time. We told you O to the 4. We said you're going to go to jail. O to the 4 is going to go to the jail. We said. Did you hear what ADA Palmer said? There's not much of you left. That's why you're starting CCK, or you're in CCK. Well, CCK is going away. And as for 524, we're going to close your cell door. When it comes to Christie Rec, you'll be getting your yard time when you're doing hard time. So think about it, because the time to think about it is past. and this behavior is past. It needs to stop right now, and if you won't stop it, we will stop it. Are there any questions? Jackie Fisher from Fox News.
Hi. I have a question about something else.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Well, we don't have families of victims here, so I think that's okay.
Okay. It has to do with the shooting on Palmetto Street the other night, Friday. So there was 2 people arrested yesterday. One of them, I think it was Tyree. You guys asked for $999,000 in bail, and court set the bail at $120K on the last incident. I know you love talking about bail, and you guys ask for big, and they give you little.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about this, fellow.
Well, I can certainly, Joanne Pescatore, who is our chief of the homicide non-fatal shooting unit, would have more specifics, but she's working very busily on some pressing investigations and arrests. But having said that, to me, this appears to be one more example of how cash bail fails us. Money is not a guarantee that people will not get out. It's not a guarantee. The best way to handle this is to get money out of it. Find the people who present a huge danger, keep them in jail until their trial, and find people who are in jail more because of poverty but do not present a great danger and get them out. Money should have nothing to do with it, and your question, I think, raises what appears to be one more example of the problem with cash bail. Do you have anything else?
No.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. John Turner, do you have any questions?
Were you able to give us any information about the shooting on Sunday?
Yes.
On 31st of Maurice Ferry, and whether the mother's going to be charged?
So the question has to do with the shooting of a 3-year-old that occurred. It's a very, very active investigation. I can, at this time, confirm that we expect the mother of the 3-year-old to be charged with a number of charges. They will include endangering the welfare of a child, also include the charge of conspiracy, and a number of other charges that basically relate to the criminally misinforming law enforcement, to criminally not telling the truth to law enforcement. So we expect that charging to occur very quickly. The investigation remains open. It is not over. We continue to gather information, but we are confident in these charges at this time. Anything else? We're good? Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. We appreciate it.